The NFL script writers have a sick sense of humor and get ready for more of the same and more Tay-Tay. That's right. It's time for Sunday Night Blitz. Welcome to Sunday Night Blitz presented by Prime. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. We're hanging out with you every single Sunday as we always. Frank, I'm just going to get right to this. I feel sad. I'm sad down in my heart, right? I was feeling you today. I was channeling my inner Frank Schwab, because if you've listened to this show at all, we know that you usually on big Sundays when there's a ton of action, you like to go to beat-ups, right? Like Buffalo Wild Wings, hang out. Well, I got some buddies that are big fans and of different teams, and so they were like, "Hey, we should go to beat-ups today and hang out." So I went there. I felt the inner Frank Schwab. I was like, I understand why he goes here. It's miraculous. But one of my friends, Lions fan, just diehard. So at halftime, he was feeling so good. He was feeling so happy, and I just watched him melt in front of me. Like, as we tape this right now, I think we might have just witnessed one of the most shocking meltdowns in NFL playoff history. Frank, this feels like the Lions lose to the 49ers, and I don't know, I feel like shades of 28-3 here. Like, this feels like the sort of thing that your fan base never gets over. This is absolute heartbreak from the NFL scriptwriters. And
part of me hates it because you phrased it absolutely correctly. This was the Lions lose to the 49ers. Nobody's caring about San Francisco right now in this incredible comeback. And we'll get to San Francisco. We got 2 weeks for the Super Bowl matchup against the Chiefs. But right now, in the aftermath, this is all about the Lions. I have two good friends, both Lions fans, different parts of the country. One's a good college friend of mine, Dan. Another is a friend here in Colorado, Rick. And they've just been so excited for this. And you could tell, I was texting them during the game and stuff, that it was like oh my God, this is actually happening type of moment. And for them to have that snatched away from them is just heartbreaking. Both of them were ready to sleep on my floor in Las Vegas at the Luxor. They both texted me separately like, "Hey, I'm coming for the Super Bowl." And I imagined it was going to be Detroit West, right? Like, every Lions fan who's been waiting their entire lives to see the Lions in the Super Bowl, don't care about the ticket prices. I'm going to Vegas. We're up 24/7. This is actually happening. The one, and maybe this gives the Lions fans a little bit of comfort. You know, I like all sports, not just football. The team that I thought about was the Texas Rangers. Go back to 2012. They absolutely melt down in the ninth inning of Game 6, right? Like, I have a good friend, a former coworker, Graham Watson, big Rangers fan. And it was basically, how do you ever bounce back from this and root for the Texas Rangers again? How do you ever have hope after that? Well, the Texas Rangers won a World Series this past year, so maybe there's hope for the Lions. But if you're a Lions fan, I can't even imagine trying to care about football tomorrow. Like, I wouldn't be watching the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be reading stuff about the game. I would just probably go into a media blackout until somehow, some way I can feel good enough to watch football again. This was just an absolutely heartbreaking, crushing loss for every Lions fan. I feel for you guys and girls. I feel for everybody in the state of Michigan. And I'm a Wisconsin guy. I usually don't feel for people in the state of Michigan often, Fitz. But this was you're right. It's 28-3. It's the Rangers in Game 6, whatever, the Red Sox in 1986 Game 6. It's one of those type of losses where it's just, how do you recover from this?
17-point lead at the half. And maybe the most surprising thing, tell me what you thought. But as I was watching the first half, I thought, man, the 49ers aren't ready for their speed. Like, there was some level of Detroit that was able to get absolutely away from everybody. There's this moment for me where they seemed to be a step slow and the Lions were a step fast, and the Lions were running the ball all over them. So as the Lions are running the ball, I'm sitting there thinking, my God, like, how do you adjust to that? There is no usual adjustment. And then in the second half, it wasn't as much San Francisco adjusted. I felt like the Lions fell apart. They didn't commit to running the football as much. All of a sudden, a couple of key plays that we'll get into, a couple of key decisions from good old Dan Campbell. Like, there's this moment where I continually look at the Lions and say, how the hell did you lose that game? When particularly in the first half, everything you did looked so easy against the 49ers defense. It should have been ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Johnson was calling a great game. They were just outplaying them. They were the better team through 2.5 quarters. I'll say this, and this is so unfair to the Lions because this is a different team. They don't carry all the burden of this history, right? But Dan Campbell makes a decision to go for it on 4th and 2. The ball bounces off Josh Reynolds' hands, whether he should have caught it or not. That one is questionable. He had another one that he definitely should have caught on 3rd and 10. It was a big play in this game. But as soon as that pass went incomplete, I thought, 49ers winning this game. Like immediately. And I assume I'm not the only one either, right? I don't think I would have thought that way about another team. Like if the Ravens or Chiefs or whoever drop a ball at 4th and 2 and you're leading by 14 points, it's like, oh boy, they're leaving the door open. With this, I was like, Lions are going to lose. The 49ers winning this game. And right after that, the Ayuk catch happens and Gibbs fumbles. And it's just like, everybody in the entire state of Michigan at that point, I think starting at the 4th and 2, their hearts had to sink. And being an analytics guy, I enjoy analytics, but I do also understand taking the points sometimes. We just need to get into this, Fitz. What did you think? Because Campbell passed on a field goal later in the 4th quarter. It was 48 yards, I believe. They passed on 6 points there. Really made a difference at the end of the game. I know it's Dan Campbell's way, and this is how I'm playing, and nobody's going to tell me differently, and I'm going for it on 4th down more than every other NFL coach. But it just felt like at that point in the game, when you're up 14 points, take the field goal, Dan. I really, again, I'm an analytics guy. I know the math behind it. I know that going for it on 4th down is a better move more often than not. But in this case, I was just like, didn't sit right with me. And he's going to have to answer questions about this all offseason.
I hated it. I hated it, and I hated it for a couple of reasons. One, late in the first half, what did they do? As time was expiring in the first half from, the 2-yard line, they took the points to make it a 3-possession game, which told you, hey, we want to stay up by 3 possessions. Then, in the second half, to your point, they have 2 opportunities to do it, and I think the key number here is 5. That's how many first downs they had. Like, analytics are great, but you still have to turn around and understand the flow of the game. If your offense is getting absolutely nothing done and you are in field goal range, you can't just look at it and say, well, the analytics say to go here. Okay, do the analytics know that your offense has completely lost all of its life in the second half? Do the analytics at that point know that you're no longer seeming to be able to run the football the way you were? Do the analytics know that you have stalled? And there has to be a point from the coach's sideline that you stop with just the numbers and say, hey, what's the feel of the game say? Like, I don't want coaches to coach tight, but if the feel of the game is tight, then take the damn points, because you lose this game by 3 points and everything. Once you start chasing points, everything is different. And you're right. I thought that it was all of it. It's Campbell not taking the points. It's the drops that started to make it feel tight. It was the fumble that was absolutely asinine. It was the moment going down and having the opportunity to down a punt at the 1-yard line and stupidly having your foot on the end zone line. These were all examples of the Lions feeling tight. And if you feel tight, you got to take the points just to give everybody a little bit more breathing room. I thought that was a moment where Dan Campbell lost sight of what he was seeing and instead was just, hey, this is our personality. And you can't just be that black and white with it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely in that I think Campbell at some point kind of gets caught up in the whole, this is our identity and we have to be this identity. Well, you know what? You've never been up by 14 points in an NFC championship game before either. Like, this is a different scenario where it just felt like, to your point you made at the beginning of that, you keep them at a 3-score arm's distance. You feel confident. The San Francisco crowd, like the 49ers fans, there's just such a big difference between being down 2 scores and 3 scores, right? You're down 17. You're like, man, this is going to take a lot to come back from. Only one team in NFC Championship history never come back from 17 points down. That was the 49ers of all teams against the Falcons at the end of the 2012 season. But I just felt like, kick a field goal there, you feel like, okay, yeah, that's not exactly what we wanted, but we're still up 3 scores. You still got to come back and beat us. And we're pretty confident in the way we're playing right now. You don't get it there. And again, they got the guy open. So I get it, at least on some level, that maybe it was the right call with a bad result. But the result is so jarring at that point of, and the 49ers had to feel like, let's go. Like, we're in this game. We're down 14, not 17. We go down and score a touchdown right now. And it's, let's go. The crowd's going to be back into it, wish they were. And that's exactly what happened. And again, I shouldn't hold the Lions, being the Lions, against them, but I did feel that. I felt like that. Just stay confident, keep them at arm's length at 3 scores. Don't unnecessarily risk that right here. Maybe that's just dumb with the math and stuff, but to your point, what's the feel of the game? How's this going to feel if you miss it? How's it going to feel if you make it? And I think at that moment, Dan Campbell is just a prisoner of, this is who I am. This is what I have to do. No, you really don't. Like, every situation could be different. And I think in this situation, kicking a field goal there would have been just fine. And that's, again, something they're going to regret and think about and go over until we play football again in early September. And that's a tough offseason for the Lions and their fans and Dan Campbell too.
David Montgomery, 15 carries for 93 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries for 45 yards, right? Like at one point, even Jamison Williams had more rushing yards than Christian McCaffrey. Like everything was breaking right for the Lions.
To the point, Fitz, real quick, to the point where Goff misses a touchdown pass to Gibbs in the second quarter. Misses it. Gibbs wide open and is coming up on third down. And I'm like, I was like, well, you're just going to get it. Like, that's how well Goff was playing, to the point of like, I had full confidence in Jared Goff after missing a touchdown, and he did. Got it right back, got a first down. Everything was going their way. Everything. And
to have that completely shift on its head in the second half, there are points in a game where I believe as a coaching staff, as a quarterback, like as everybody, you just have to stop the bleeding. And how often do we say, from a quarterback standpoint, we say, hey, sometimes you got to take what the defense will give you. I worked with A.J. McCarron for a while, and he said one thing that Nick Saban always taught quarterbacks there was take what the defense will give you, and eventually they'll give you the game. There's a patience to that. I think you have to, as a head coach, even as an aggressive head coach, you have to understand the situation sometimes. And the second half, you just needed to find some way to gain momentum. When we started to see everything fall apart, when little passes were suddenly going high and drops were suddenly catching up, like there was this, and Brock Purdy all of a sudden became this monster athlete that nobody, like, I feel like Brock Purdy, there must have been a bath of Vaseline somewhere in the locker room, and he just swirled around in it in the first half during halftime, because he came out in the second half and they could get hands on him, but they couldn't stop him, right? Like, so you've got all of this momentum for the other side. Christian McCaffrey starts to get going. Purdy is all of a sudden playing with a lot of rhythm. You got to find a way to stop that. And to me, taking points would have stopped some of that bleeding and at least stopped some of the momentum that was going away from the Lions. I think that's the missed opportunity, that when they self-scout this loss, they're going to have to look back at it and say, man, we got to have a better understanding of that momentum factor and what it means to how we carry ourselves. Man, it's a momentum change. You're not going to see that very often, where a team erases a 17-point deficit in 8 minutes of game time. It was just so 27 straight points. 27 straight points. They just kicked the snot out of them for 27 straight points. I mean, you do have to give the 49ers a lot of credit here. We haven't talked about them enough. Again, we'll have 2 weeks to talk about them. But for them to stay in this game mentally and not let 24-7 get them down, I mean, you know, not the same crew, but this is the 49ers team to blow a Super Bowl in similar fashion against the Chiefs a couple of years ago. And like, you just have this, you know, they just didn't play well against the Packers a week before. So for them to maintain their confidence when they were not playing well at all, and to just get it done. I mean, Ravens didn't do it. Like, we'll talk about that game in a second. Ravens had no confidence that they can get it done. It's not easy when you're down 24-7 at the half. And, you know, conference in NFC Championship game history, only one team has done this before. It takes a lot to stay mentally involved in a game. The Lions did open the door a few times with them. And the Ayuk catch happens 1 out of a million times. That was one of the great catches of all time. Like, that's just not going to happen very often. And Josh Reynolds doesn't drop that pass on 3rd and 10. I thought that was that's a play we're not going to talk about too much, because we're going to talk a lot about the 4th downs and Ayuk and some of Purdy's unbelievable scrambles. When Josh Reynolds dropped that on 3rd and 10 and he's wide open and Goff gives him a perfect pass right here, you just knew at that point, right? Like, you knew, like, this is over. Like, the Lions they're choking right now. This is getting away from them in a hurry. So everything went against the Lions, but you got to give the 49ers credit for taking it too. They could have folded in this game like the Ravens did, and they didn't. And it was pretty impressive that they're heading to the Super Bowl after 2 straight weeks of basically being on life support. You got to get the defibrillator out for them against the Packers and against the Lions. Somehow they survived both times to advance to the Super Bowl. Yeah, Brock Purdy finishes this game 20 of 31 for 267, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That pick is significant only because he becomes the first quarterback in the playoffs at all to win a game when he's had a turnover. Every other game, the winning quarterback has had 0 turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. So he becomes the first to be able to survive a turnover. But I also thought there was some credit, because last week, Brock was pedestrian, to say politely, until late in the game, and then he has an incredible 4th quarter comeback moment, and everybody falls in love with him, understandably. I've tried to stay pretty even on the Brock Purdy train through this process. I thought in the first half, he looked a little stiff at times. They were having a hard time getting things going. In the second half, He didn't. He just looked really comfortable. And he was, as I said earlier, slippery. He climbed the pocket. He got around things. He made some athletic plays. He made some throws that have you sitting there saying, my God, he's moving one way and throws the other way. Like things that we don't necessarily give Brock a ton of credit for. I thought Brock Purdy in the second half played a very clean and very good football game. That level of Brock with a little bit of confidence, like I think we're learning quickly that when Brock's cooking, you got to find a way to knock that rhythm off, because when he is cooking and he gets that little bit of momentum behind him, he's tough to shut down. Like he's definitely a streaky guy in that sense. Like when he's got that, he's going for it.
I thought one of the big hidden plays of the game 49ers wise was, I believe it's 3rd and 4, fourth quarter. He just gets out of the rush and somehow picks up a first down with a pretty long run. I think it was 20 some yards. And at that point, there was a field goal there and a touchdown there. And I think Elijah Mitchell ended up scoring at the end of that drive is enormous. So look at the end of the game. Like, look what, if you just kick a field goal there again, the Lions all of a sudden feel like, oh, we're only down 6. We're okay here. We can go downfield and win the game. Instead, Brock picks up a huge first down. They end up scoring on that drive. He makes plays. And I know that's kind of this thing that you can't really nail down, and I don't always believe clutch exists or all that, but there's something to be said about a guy who's not rattled in the moment. And 2 straight weeks he wasn't rattled. He didn't play well against the Packers. He didn't have a great first half against the Lions here. Found ways to win, and I think that team has enough confidence that, hey, if the Super Bowl comes down to it and it's 2 minutes left and we need a drive to go win the game, we feel good about Brock Purdy doing it. Why wouldn't they at this point? He's done it each of the last 2 weeks in really high pressure spots.
A week ago, we weren't even sure if Debo would play in this game, right? Like a couple of days ago, we weren't sure. And Debo was exactly what Debo is for this 49ers team. Like there is a level of San Francisco that I think showed you what is great about the 49ers this year. Like they can do exactly that second half, 27 points in a row. That's sort of what they've been able to do to everybody. Somehow, some way, they explode consistently, constantly. And Debo, big part of that. I'm pulling up the numbers on him here. 8 catches for 89 yards on 9 targets. It felt like he was open every time Brock looked to him. And I kept thinking, man, a few days ago, we weren't sure if there was a fracture in the shoulder. And now he's out there doing that in the NFC Championship game. Total, he's got that dog in him. Like, there's no way around it. Like, an epic moment from him.
Unbelievable player. And, you know, when just to shift gears on you, because I have nothing to add to Debo. He's just an unbelievable football player. Like, he's one of those guys who does put up great stats, but the stats don't even tell you. Like, you watch a game and you're like, that's the guy. That's the 49ers key player. But another one of their key players, Christian McCaffrey, I wrote about this and talking about what's on the line for these guys in the conference championship round if they win a couple more games. Usually we talk about legacies with quarterbacks, coaches. If Christian McCaffrey, if the 49ers win a Super Bowl here, we're going to start talking about Christian McCaffrey being a top 10 all-time running back. People need to get ready for that. Like, he's up there already. And because you start comparing resumes to LaDainian Tomlinson and Marshall Faulk and some guys we just put in the top 10, Christian McCaffrey looks pretty good with the numbers and the comparisons. And if he has a championship to this, pretty impressive. I don't think I've seen a guy his size be better at the goal line than he is. When they hand him the ball at the 2-yard line, it's like, they're not stopping him. He's going to find a way. He's not a Derrick Henry where he's going to bull you into the end zone, but he's going to find a way to score. And he's a great player. He's going to be one of the big stories of the Super Bowl. I thought he was key for them. He got a couple really big plays in the second half when they needed it. And it's just, there's something to be said about when you do it. Like, I'm not trying to diss Brock Purdy here by any means, but he's not Joe Montana or Steve Young, right? Like, he's not that level of a quarterback. There's something to be said when you're down inside the 5-yard line. You don't need to worry about Brock Purdy because you could just give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. He's going to score every single time. That's how good he is at the goal line at 192 pounds or whatever he is. He's really just one of those players who I think has so much to gain, non-quarterback, non-coach, over the course of the Super Bowl. If they win, we're going to have a much different conversation about Christian McCaffrey going forward and his place in NFL history.
Let me ask you this. Great comebacks or great endings in the playoffs, like epic, oh my God, meltdowns in the playoffs, are usually wrapped up with one statement or one word. Like I say the drive, I say the fumble, I say the tuck rule, I say 28-3. Like we all know wide right. We all know what these things mean. Like, is there a nickname we're going to end up giving this game? Because it feels like this is on par with. And as we were starting to put the show together tonight, and I was just talking to Stone, like for whatever reason, when you think of big comebacks, I always think of that Oilers-Bills game way back in the day too. Like, but you got to have like a nickname. Is there a good like like it bungled in the bay. Like I don't know. What are we doing, Frank?
I mean, this isn't a great nickname. You're more creative than me, but it's the fourth downs. It's not the catch. It's not the drive. It's the fourth downs. That is what we're going to talk about from this game, because truly, we've had games before that have turned on fourth down decisions. And I'm talking about kind of the analytics era, right? Since Doug Peterson started going for it all the time in 2018, and coaches were like, oh my goodness, or 2017, I believe it was. And coaches were like, oh my goodness, we can go for it on 4th and 1 and plus territory. That's great. Like, this is kind of the first time it feels like the entire season changed on a couple of fourth down calls, right? Like, if Dan Campbell doesn't go for it there, just takes the field goals, this might be a totally different thing we're talking about. We might be sitting here talking about, oh my God, the Lions going for the Super Bowl for the first time ever. They could have won that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. They beat the Chiefs once this year. I get it. It was a million years ago, no Kelsey, no Jones, but they still beat the Chiefs. The Lions could have won a Super Bowl this year, but they decided to gamble for it on fourth down, which might not even be the wrong call. That's going to be debated a long, long time. But this feels like this is the battlefield for analytics versus non-analytics, and everybody who's non-analytics is going to point back to this game and say, remember when the Lions went for it on fourth down a couple times and didn't get it, lost by 3 points? That's why you got to take the points. And it's going to take this debate to another level. This is that's what I'm going to remember from this game, is Dan Campbell going for it on fourth down when everybody's debating this, going 0 for 2 on those 2 fourth downs. And that pretty much you could say, changed NFL history, because the Lions could have gone to a Super Bowl for the first time in their history.
The 4th and fail. Like, I mean, I'm just workshopping this as we go. The 4th and fail. I will say this, and I want to stress this, because I saw my buddy Michael Jr. tweeted out earlier, everybody's going to be talking about Dan Campbell, and we're not going to talk about the drops and the fumble. I think we need to talk about all of it. Like, I'm not absolving anybody here. I think the drops spoke to a team that started to get tight. I think the mental mistakes spoke to a team that started to get tight. I think all of those things can be true. At the same time, very importantly, that the decisions of this coaching staff did not put their team in the best situation to win. And when you are in the NFC Championship game and all this other stuff's going wrong, maybe instead of rolling all the dice on there, like you and I both like to sit at the tables and dabble. And I say this all the time. There's a difference between playing your fun money at the tables and playing your mortgage at the table. In this game, I think they were irresponsibly playing their mortgage. It doesn't mean analytics are wrong. It doesn't mean analytics are right. It means in this game, in these moments, with this feel, with what was happening, it was a bad decision. And I think they played with their mortgage money instead, and now they lost their house. And now in the world of the NFL, man, they were kissed by the football script gods this year. I don't know that you just immediately say, oh, we're going to run it back. Like, I love the concept of the Lions are going to be good for years to come, and they have a good roster. There's a lot we can like there. But shouldn't we be learning constantly that now more than ever in the modern NFL, you got to capitalize when you have the moment? And I'm with you. I sat there at the half, and I thought to myself as I was looking at the score, my God, the Lions are going to the Super Bowl, and they can actually win the dang thing. And they went from that to now they're going to watch the Super Bowl like me and you, and I think the fourth downs are a big part of why.
Huge part, huge. And I mean, speaking to, like, I was thinking about this, like, will the Lions ever get back to this point, the NFC Championship game? Like, ever is a long time, but I'm talking about this crew, Dan Campbell, all them. It's not guaranteed. Not even guaranteed that they're going to win a division next year. Look, the Packers are going to be better. Jordan Love took a big step. The Bears might emerge like we've seen teams do when their young talent comes along and they finish the season well. There's no guarantee the Lions are ever going to be back in the spot again, or it might just take a really, really long time. And I just, again, it makes my heart break for the Lions fans, because this was their shot, and they're going to think about, we've both been, we've had favorite teams that have blown leads and blown games, and you just think about it like, man, what if they just taken a field goal right there?
What's the toughest one? What's the toughest one, Frank? Like, so for me, everybody knows the Tuck rule, right? Like, when I think heartbreaking, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. There's been some bad losses. I'll never forget where I was, the house I was sitting in, the words that were said afterwards. Like, you don't forget the Tuck rule if you're a Raiders fan. I think for Lions fans, for the next 30, 40 years, it will be, I remember where I was for this game, for the NFC meltdown, for the 4th and fail. Like, you're going to remember. So for you, Frank, there's got to be one. Like, what's the loss that you remember, right? Where the meltdown you remember?
It was Grayson Allen going nuts for Duke in the 2015 championship game as a Wisconsin alum. But I know a lot of, look, I'm from Wisconsin, know a lot of Packers fans. And I wrote from that Seattle NFC Championship game 2014 season, the Packers are never going to get over this. And I remember some people like the Packers could still win a Super Bowl, and it doesn't even matter because the Packers could have gone on to win the next 3 Super Bowls, and they would have thought it should have been 4. The game, the onside kick, blowing the 16-zip lead, Morgan Burnett going down when he had no business going down on an interception. You just don't get over these losses. Like, even if you go on to win one, that feeling never really leaves you of, oh my God, the disappointment you have. Like, real quick story, 2014 Final Four, I went Dallas, Jerry World. I think the Badgers are going to win. All of a sudden, Kentucky hits a miracle 3 for one of the Harrison brothers. And I sat on that train going back to my hotel thinking, why do I care about sports? Why? Like, I should not feel this bad caring about sports, but I still do because I've been a sports fan my whole life. I'm sure there are Lions fans wherever they are coming home from Ford Field at that watch party looked unbelievable. The ones who flew all the way to Santa Clara, the ones just watching at home, that 89-year-old season ticket holder who are just sitting there thinking to themselves, how do I root for this team again? Like, how do I get myself back to the point where I care? Because that feeling is going to be so sick in their stomachs all off season from 24/7. 24/7 is going to live with them. They can win a Super Bowl next year, but the feeling of tonight won't go away. It's again, heartbreaking. I keep coming back to that word, heartbreaking for the Detroit Lions fans because this is a game they'll never get over. They'll never get over this game, no matter how good Dan Campbell is in the future, how many Super Bowls they might end up winning. This game's always going to be a part of their fandom and not in a great way.
Yeah, how many Seahawks fans will always talk about their Super Bowl loss as much as not?
Right. They beat the Broncos 43-8, but you bring it up to a Seahawks fan and they're like, give the ball to Marshawn. I mean, it's just losses. There are a handful of losses in everybody's life. Like we just talked about, whether it's the Buckner game or the Rangers blowing it with Nelson Cruz not being able to catch a fly ball or whatever it is, the Malcolm Butler interception, Tuck rule, whatever it is, where you just put the pieces together and you say, we could have won a Super Bowl that year. We could have won a World Series that year, whatever it is. And that feeling when somebody brings this game up to a Lions fan in 15 years, they're going to have that same feeling they're feeling right now. And I feel sick about that, knowing so many fans of teams that have climbed them out and are not gotten there, got that stomach punch. It's a brutal feeling being a fan sometimes, man. We both know it.
Yeah, well, America thought that they were going to get the Lions in the Super Bowl at one point. That did not happen. Also, as much as we sit here and we talk about the 49ers getting there, a lot of people were convinced that the NFL script writers had it all set, that we were going to get Ravens and 49ers. Conspiracy theorists abound everywhere. But now, those very same conspiracy theorists are all telling you that the NFL always wanted Kansas City in because they want Taylor Swift around the Super Bowl. Here's what I know. I know either way, it was a hell of a game, and we'll break it down for you next. All right, Frank. So I'm an idiot, and I just need to clearly, loudly say it.
Can we clip that, Stone?
Yeah, just clip it, Stone. Just play it. Like, as I sat down with my buddies, and they all said, "What do you think about the Ravens-Chiefs game?" We're about to start the game. I said, "You know what? I think the Ravens are a better football team. I can acknowledge I think it is stupid to bet against Patrick Mahomes. But I still did it. I bet against Patrick Mahomes. I put my money on the Ravens. Luckily, I had some other things that cashed out for me, but I did the stupid thing. You should never bet against Patrick Mahomes. I am simply like, right now, if you ask me who's going to win the Super Bowl, it's Patrick Mahomes, because I am tired of looking like an idiot every time I tell you Patrick Mahomes isn't going to get it done. A lot of people gave up on the Chiefs throughout the course of the year. A lot of people thought the Chiefs were going to be left for dead, and instead, we saw a defense that I was convinced would at least be able to be competitive against the Chiefs. Absolutely look outmanned, outclassed, outpowered, out everything. The Chiefs are headed back to the Super Bowl, and in the process, the Ravens, as much as we just talked about the shrinking of the Lions, the Ravens offensively and defensively shrunk. They were a shell of themselves. They were not good enough. Kansas City, in a fairly dominant performance, ends up in the Super Bowl.
I will one-up you with the I'm an idiot game here. Right after the Chiefs lost to your Raiders, Christmas, lead of my power rankings was, let's not cross the Chiefs off the list because they look bad now, and everybody's writing them off. We are going to get to the playoffs, and we're going to ask the question, who's the best quarterback in the playoffs? Who's the best coach in the playoffs? And the answer to both might be from the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. So I was brilliant, right? Like that's very smart of me. So what do? I bet against the Chiefs 3 straight weeks in the playoffs, and I'm taking 3 L's for that. Like, at some point, look, Fitz, I hate this whole. The only thing that matters in NFL analysis is the quarterback. We talk too much about quarterbacks as it is, and then some people boil it just down to, well, it's Patrick Mahomes. We don't care about anything else. We're not going to talk about defense or the offensive line or schemes or coaching or anything. But then you watch Patrick Mahomes win year after year, and even in a season where they didn't have the best team in the AFC, like Ravens were the better team all season. They just were. Like, I mean, they were the better team today, but they were the better team all season. You watch Patrick Mahomes walking into another Super Bowl without his best team, and you're like, well, okay, if you got the best quarterback, then maybe that's it. Maybe that's just the answer key to everything. Just have the best quarterback, you're going to Super Bowl. Hats off to Patrick Mahomes, this team. A lot was made of the pregame kerfuffle with Justin Tucker, and they're pushing and shoving. I thought that was pretty telling that this Chiefs team had an edge coming into this game. Like, we don't care about you guys. We're the Chiefs. You're going to try to warm up? With Patrick Mahomes warming up, this is Patrick Mahomes. Get out of here, Justin Tucker. We're going to throw your helmet away. We're not here to lose this game. We're not here to be in awe of the Baltimore Ravens. We're here because we're the Kansas City Chiefs. We're the defending Super Bowl champs. We're going to come into Baltimore and win this game. I thought they had an edge about them. I thought Mahomes was absolutely locked in from the first quarter on. Look, the Ravens made great adjustments second half, got pressure on him, got him down a couple times. But it just felt like the Chiefs knew what they needed to do to win this game. And just hats off to the Chiefs. This is really, really impressive. Maybe the most impressive postseason. I mean, you consider they beat a good Dolphins team, then went on the road to beat Josh Allen and the Bills and went on the road to beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Like, that's their playoff run. Aaron Schatz, one of the great analysis of the NFL, said statistically, this would be, if they end up beating San Francisco, the toughest run any Super Bowl champion has ever had. And I think that speaks to what the Chiefs were able to accomplish, and just going in and winning a game honestly, I didn't think they had any business winning. Fitz, I know that sounds crazy, but I talked about this a couple times during the week where I said, you can't tell me how the Chiefs win this game because they're not better in any way than the Ravens. The Ravens were great all season, capital G, great all season. But when it came down to you really need to go win this game, one team had Patrick Mahomes and the other didn't.
I hated the Ravens' defensive game plan. And I can't say that loud enough because Mike McDonald is supposed to be the next great head coach for somebody, right? I hated how much in this game they simply sent 4 and they dropped everybody back. As they were dropping everybody back, they let them sit soft. So you end up with this situation where the time of possession in the first half particularly was wildly skewed to the Chiefs, which would usually tell you incredibly long drives that they're running the football. They weren't. They weren't even trying for the most part to run the football. Yes, they got to the over on Pacheco rushing attempts by halftime. The number of that was 14 and a half coming in. They got to 14 at the half. So, that worked out for them. But 90% of how they were running or keeping the ball in the first half was short passes. And in fact, the average depth of completion to Travis Kelce was just over 10 yards. To everybody else was 2 in the first half. So what you saw was that Kelce was open wherever he wanted to be. Finishes with 11 catches for 100 and something yards. But everybody else, they were comfortable taking the fact that Baltimore was going to give you 3 yards here, 4 yards there, 6 yards there, 3 yards here, 4 yards there, 6 yards there. And it was just like watching a master class of Kansas City saying, hey, we're going to control the football 1 inch at a time. And as long as we keep moving forward, even though we're throwing the football, and the Ravens had no answer. By the time, you're right, they made some adjustments in the second half that were much better. But by the time they did that, they had no rhythm. They had the offense for the Ravens was already a failure. I hated the game plan for the Ravens. As much as I love this team this year, and as much as everybody respects all of their coaches, I thought it was a trash game plan.
One play epitomizes that for me. End of the first half, third down. I believe it was third down anyway. Yes, it was. The Chiefs are basically looking at a 61-yard field goal, which I'm not really trying to do at Baltimore, right? Unless I'm Justin Tucker. Harrison Butker is a good kicker. The Ravens rush 4, play back, give up 9 yards, and give up a 52-yard field goal. What are you doing? Like, you really you didn't think this through that maybe Patrick Mahomes is just like, oh, you're just going to give me a much easier field goal attempt, not just 9 extra yards to get Harrison Butker in position? I'll take that. So to your point, I think that play kind of epitomized it, where be a little aggressive, put some heat on him. Don't just give the Kansas City Chiefs 3 points, which ended up being a pretty big deal in the second half. I hated everything about the Ravens in this game. I just thought that they panicked really quickly. And not a great look for a John Harbaugh coach team. John Harbaugh's a great coach and Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback, but you could just tell like the pressure really seemed to get to them at home. You're facing Mahomes. They're throwing helmets everywhere. Zay Flowers has a sequence of, I get he's a rookie, but my goodness, they finally make a big play to kind of get back in the game. And he gets up and shoves L'Jarius Sneed and throws a ball at him and keeps talking to it. Like,
that was a great call, by the way. Like, that was a great call by the ref. I don't care.
Great call.
I saw people yelling about it, and I was sitting there thinking, my God, there are fifth graders right now that have been watching football for 2 seconds that know if you stand over somebody after a completion and you spin the ball down on them, you're going to get a penalty. So, like, the refs are making it about them. No, the ref's job is to call that play. Like, that is a stupid penalty. There's no I'm not going to blame the ref for calling a player out on a stupid penalty.
And that's a team that had no poise at that point. That's a team that was just so frustrated and shook and on tilt that, like, Zay Flowers finally makes a play and then he picks up that penalty. By the way, real quick, we get rid of this whole like, oh, the refs are just, they want to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Taylor, stop, please. My goodness, the refs were not.
I thought the refs did a nice job.
I thought the refs were fine. They missed some calls, but nothing was egregious and nothing's because there's a conspiracy. You know how many, Fitz, you know how many people are going to tune into the Super Bowl with Taylor Swift there? About 110 million. You know how many people are going to tune into the Super Bowl? Taylor Swift wasn't there? About 110 million. They don't care about ratings for the Super Bowl. They're going to do historic ratings either way. This is not a Chiefs conspiracy thing. Please stop. This is so annoying. And it just brings down the level of discourse of the NFL so much. I hate this whole like, the refs just give the Chiefs all the calls. The refs called the Chiefs for 2 straight holding calls at the end of the first half. The Ravens just couldn't take advantage. The Ravens just got outplayed today. This had nothing to do with the refs.
It's not the refs' fault that, on one play, Mahomes gets punched in the face. Like, it's not
like, what is
the
he gonna
refs'
do?
fault. Like,
what are you going to do?
And then somebody's going to say, well, if we're going to call it on this person, call it on. All right, look, calls get missed sometimes. But I'm with you. Like, 100% of the way. We have to be very clear here that there is no conspiracy theory because there's no profit in a conspiracy theory. Like, it's just there's no money to be made. And
there's really
also, like, we live in a world, Frank, where, my God, how many of you, like, if you had a huge secret, a secret that nobody in the world could ever tell, do you really think that you could keep that? Like, anybody can keep that? Is there anybody that can actually keep a secret, even in a non-disclosure? Even if you had NDAs and you went out and said, well, I'm going to have somebody sign an NDA. You think that nobody in the world would ever break an NDA? And I love this, like, because I saw the TikToks out there of like, oh, the script is out because one bakery in some random city had cakes for the Super Bowl already made that said Ravens versus Super Bowl, and the script was released. So you think that the person that got the NFL script is like a $12 an hour cake baker, and that person is keeping the secret, but not telling the rest of the world? Like, this is
you're going to jump on those cakes, Fitz. Come on. I mean, can't wait.
I saw somebody somebody put out on Instagram a picture of a Rhode Island newscast that said, oh, for the Ravens 49ers Super Bowl, this is going to be the weather or some dumb thing like that. They're like, oh, so you think a graphics designer that's making minimum wage for a local station got the script and the rest of us didn't? You think that nobody's telling these secrets? Like, this is the stupidest waste of energy. The concept that the NFL needs to fix anything, that refs need to fix anything, like, the reality of it is you will watch, I will watch, everybody listening to this show will watch. They could put a bunch of turds on the field, dress them up in NFL jerseys, and we would still watch because we are addicted to the content. So there's no need to fix or write anything.
Yeah, and if you really think this is all true, why do you watch? Like, that's what I never understand. Like, oh, the NFL's rigged for the Chiefs and Taylor Swift. Don't watch. Like, I don't watch wrestling. Yeah, because I know that it's all fake. Like, what's the point anymore of watching? If you really truly think the refs are just in the bag, it annoys me. Let's be smarter. These 2 weeks, just give me 2 weeks of smart football analysis and not talk about how the refs are going to rig it for the Chiefs. But anyway, yes, this game was not
also,
about that.
It's not the refs' fault that the Ravens never tried to run the football.
That's right. That's what I was just about ready to say. Refs didn't have anything to do with the Ravens completely blowing this game. Like, they didn't have anything to do with Lamar Jackson throwing an interception into the end zone and triple coverage to Isaiah Likely. Like, they didn't have anything to do with Zay Flowers trying to make up for this, boneheaded penalty, diving into the end zone and fumbling. Like, that's nothing to do with the refs. That's nothing to do with Roger Goodell calling in something. That the Ravens got outplayed in this game because they panicked and they choked. Like, that stinks for them. It stinks for Ravens fans. They did not play their best game. They were, in my mind, the best team in the NFL this year. And they were just laid an absolute egg today, which is a different type of disappointment than the Lions loss, but still crushing for all those Ravens fans out there.
That was Zay Flowers' first fumble as an NFL professional in this game.
Was it really? Wow.
Having said that, my mind was blown last week. I was talking to Marshall Newhouse, former offensive lineman, last week, and Marshall said that one of the teams he was in, they were coached every single week. They were coached, they were quizzed, they were coached on a very important principle: never reach for the goal line. That was something that they were actually coached by the entire staff. Every player, you get the football, you see the goal line, you never reach for the goal line, because only bad things happen when you reach for the goal line. So that was coached by major NFL teams. And I want to say this clearly, because I saw social media immediately start to erupt about, yet again, the worst rule in the NFL rears its ugly head. This was not the same as fumbling out of the end zone and the other team gets the ball at the 20. This was a great defensive play that forced a fumble that was then recovered by the other team in the end zone. That's not rolling out. Like, I think the rolling out of the end zone rule is terrible. This was a great play that was clearly recovered, and that's the reason the Chiefs deserve to get the ball at the 20. Like, there's no way you're changing that rule in any way. Like, that was just a boneheaded moment by Zay Flowers trying too hard to make a play he didn't have to try that hard to make. If he had just followed the process of the coaching and not reached out for the goal line, they would have lived to see another day. But that's what happened this whole game. Every time they got close, they stepped on their own feet and they found a way to get in their own way.
And even after that, Zay Flowers, CBS reported, he goes to the bench, he slams his hand on the bench and cuts himself. He's got to get the trainers over there to tape him up. Like, this is a team that completely lost its composure. It did so early. This game was there for the taking. I mean, it was 14-7 until the final seconds of the first half. It was 17-7 for just about the entire second half. They just I think they've really just panicked. And I get it. It can happen against a Patrick Mahomes team. You feel like you got to be perfect. And maybe you do. And that kind of leads me to, if you're an AFC team and you obviously want to make the Super Bowl someday, you're just sitting there saying, this might not happen with Mahomes in our conference. Like, this was our chance. This was Josh Allen's chance. This was Lamar Jackson's chance. This might have been Tua's chance. So going back to the wild card round. And you just watch Patrick Mahomes go into yet another Super Bowl, and you say, if we couldn't beat him this year, when are we going to beat him? Because I don't think the Chiefs are going to be down this far. Like, they're not going to have these problems at receiver year after year. Like, Rashee Rice is going to get better.
Into one of the deepest receiver classes in the draft we've seen in years. Like, they'll have plenty of opportunity to address.
They got a defense now, and I just. Again, if you're an AFC team, if you're Stroud, if you're Burrow, if you're Tua, if you're Allen, if you're Lamar, you just got to look and say, this is what all those quarterbacks during Tom Brady's era felt like, because it's the same thing. It's the same thing where you give that guy, he's an absolute killer in the playoffs. Mahomes is just unbelievable. He is he's on a tier of just a few guys at this point. I mean, even at only 28 years old, you are talking about who are the absolute best quarterbacks we've ever seen play NFL football. Patrick Mahomes is in that conversation. And if he wins another Super Bowl this year, and certainly could, he keeps moving up that list of all-time greats. And we're not even really into the meat of Patrick Mahomes' career. He's 28. He's got a long way to go. He's going to win a lot more. It's absolutely amazing what he's able to do. And it just seems like you have to be like just crestfallen if you're an AFC team, AFC contender, AFC quarterback, thinking, we couldn't knock Patrick Mahomes out this year? Is it going to get better next year? When the Chiefs aren't going to be this bad again, I don't think.
I think the couple of things that really stand out, though, that make that so hard is that, number one, the Chiefs are well coached on defense. Like, at some point, you got to ask yourself, why is Spags? I know that there's been, he didn't have the best record as a head coach. If he wants to be a head coach, I can't imagine he doesn't get consideration at some point, because this defense plays lights out. But two, their offense knows their identity and is well coached. This isn't me in the stats. Like, I don't always love them, but sometimes I got to really dive into some of them. Pacheco finishes this game with 24 carries. I think the important thing is it was 24 carries for 68 yards. He averaged 2.8 yards a carry, but the Chiefs remain committed to making sure that you are going to have to account for it. On the other side, if you take Lamar Jackson's running out, if you take Lamar off of this, in fact, let's take Lamar and Zay out because he's a wide receiver. Running backs for the Baltimore Ravens totaled 6 carries. 6 carries
Wow.
total.
Wow.
How
many
can
did Gus
you
have?
get
Gus
into,
couldn't have had more than 2.
Gus had 3 carries for 20 yards. The max was the long was 15. And Justice Hill had 3 carries for 3 yards. Like, they didn't even try to run the football. They were one-dimensional from the outset. They couldn't maintain any possession in the process of being one-dimensional. It felt like Lamar, when he dropped back several times, he had time, but whether it was because of the coverage or because he didn't trust what he was seeing, wasn't doing anything with it. He didn't really run the ball at all until the second half, and there was no adjustment. Like, the Ravens offense, I felt like they were lost from the outset. They felt confused. So kudos to the Chiefs defense for confusing Lamar, but also, the hell was your game plan if your running backs aren't even attempting to get the football? Like, you have to at least attempt in January football to run it sometimes.
Yeah, and again, it was the game script never really got away from them that bad to the point where you should only have 6 running back carries. And even to the point of early in the game, first quarter, before I believe the Zay touchdown in the first quarter, 4th and 1, they line up, have Lamar run power off the right side. He breaks it for a big run. I was thinking, go back to that. Go right back. Like, it's not traditional. It's not handing off to your running back, Gus Edwards or whatever. But Lamar is one of those dudes. Like, I know they wanted to pass the ball more this year and had great success with it, but still at the end of the day, he's the best running back in that game too. So try that again. See if the Chiefs could stop it, but they never went back to really Lamar as a runner other than a scrambler. They never got the running backs involved. Again, it was just part of the panic. It was part of, oh my God, Patrick Mahomes got a touchdown on his first drive. He's 11 of 11 now. We need to pass every single play to keep. No, it was 14-7 for most of the first half. It was 17-7 for most of the second half. Like, they just really let that game script get away from them voluntarily almost.
So now the Super Bowl matchup is set. We're going to get a rematch of a Super Bowl we all remember, although there's a different quarterback for the 49ers. We get the 49ers taking on the Chiefs, remembering that Jimmy G was actually 1 quarter away from doing the impossible. Like, for most of that game, it really looked like the 49ers were going to be able to beat the Chiefs in that Super Bowl. That's not how it turned out. Mahomes and the legend of Mahomes only grew from there. These are 2 very different teams as they sit today than they were then. But the Mahomes comparison is similar. Frank, we've been talking about this a bunch through the course of this whole show. I don't know how you bet against Patrick Mahomes. I look at this, and as much as on paper, I can look at it all day long and say, well, the 49ers look like a better football team. Didn't most of us say that about the Ravens? Didn't many people say that about the Bills? In fact, some people said that about the Dolphins, like every week. And they look like a better football team. So when I say Super Bowl, and I say 49ers Chiefs, you say?
I'm pretty much with you. I don't know that I could go in for a 4th straight time going against Patrick Mahomes. Like, how do you, and we're going to hear a lot about this in the next 2 weeks of analysis. And then at some point you're going to, if you're betting on the Super Bowl, if you're dabbling on the Super Bowl, you're going to have to ask yourself a question. Am I really going to bet on Brock Purdy's team over Patrick Mahomes' team? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe you'll be right, but it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, it's just, Patrick Mahomes is that dude. He's Jordan. He's Gretzky. He's on that level where he just scares the bejesus out of you every single time you go against him. And also, you're giving Andy Reid another week to prepare. That's usually pretty good for the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs, it's another thing where I thought the Ravens were a better team than the Chiefs all season. But when it comes down to this time of year, who's got the quarterback, right? Like, who's got Patrick Mahomes? Same way where if you're asking me honestly, who's a better team from beginning of the season to right now, the answer is probably the 49ers, but they don't have Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs do. And I'll also say that, look, the 49ers, this isn't the way you really want to go into a Super Bowl. They got outplayed by the Packers. They got outplayed by the Lions in many ways. They ended up with both wins, and great for them, and that's an exciting run. But you ain't going to do that every week, especially against a Patrick Mahomes team. He'll put the dagger in you, and you ain't going to win that game. So I think the 49ers got to play a lot better than they have these playoffs. And even if they do, it's like last year's Eagles. Like, Patrick Mahomes limping around, came back to beat them. Like, he's that dude in a horror movie. You got to kill him, or he's going to come back at some point in the movie. They're going to come get you. And you just feel that way all the time. If you dabble on NFL games and you've gone against Patrick Mahomes, you've had that feeling of, what have I done? Why am I going against this guy? He's got the ball 2 minutes left, and I'm going to lose this wager. I don't know that I can do it again, Fitz. He's just that dude.
I think the hardest part of this, I'm going to go back to a stat I heard earlier this week. In his entire career, him being Mahomes, in his entire career, playoffs and regular season combined, 4 times he has lost a football game by more than 1 score in his entire career. He only has 4 losses by more than 8 points. So if you are betting on Patrick Mahomes to lose this Super Bowl, in all likelihood, you're betting on Patrick Mahomes to lose a 1-score game. And if I got 1 score at the end of the Super Bowl, 1 drive to get it done, and I got to bet on Patrick Mahomes or anybody else, at this point, I bet Patrick Mahomes. And that's all. I know it's the game is so much bigger than that. But this year, it hasn't been. I think we can have 2 separate conversations that we cover quarterbacks too much in the NFL. I agree with that. But in this situation, the entire stadium, the entire city of Baltimore knew that Mahomes was going to try and get the ball to Travis Kelce. And frankly, the Ravens have a guy in Kyle Hamilton that I think should be able to shut him down, right? Like they've got the dudes on the defensive side of the ball to be able to shut him down.
Really good defense, yeah.
And they couldn't do it. So when the whole world knows what's coming and it still happens, now you got to sit back and say, okay, like, I mean, it's stupid. There's certain athletes in certain eras that you just no longer bet against. And I think I am at that point with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It is almost impossible for me to see a way where I can comfortably go into any game at this point and say, Mahomes isn't going to find a way, because all he does is find a way to win, even when you know what's coming. So as much as I love the 49ers pluckiness and being able to get here, you make a really good point. It took some luck for them to get through those 2 games. Better to be lucky than good. I don't think there's been luck for the Chiefs. I think it has taken one person with a Herculean effort just willing this team to win. And then while he's done that, guys have been able to rest. Guys have been able to get better. Guys have been able to do their thing. This defense is played better and better. Like everything else has been able to come up next to him. I just can't bet against the Chiefs at this point.
I think one thing we need to acknowledge too is just as much as this is the one-man gang, right? No, this Chiefs defense is really good. Like, if you would have asked me a month or 2 ago, I don't know when, who's got a better defense, Chiefs or 49ers? I was like, come on, 49ers. Like, I think it's the Chiefs right now. I saw Jordan Love really have his way with the 49ers. I saw Jared Goff get really, really hot against 49ers, and them look like you kind of alluded to before. Look a little slow against the Lions. I think this Chiefs defense is nasty. They're playing really, really good football. Josh Allen got nothing going downfield in that game in the divisional round. You saw Lamar struggle the whole game. I mean, they really didn't get much going. 1 touchdown the whole game. This is an MVP quarterback. If there's a defense out there, it's going to create problems for Brock Purdy. The Chiefs can do it for sure. They have corners who are playing great right now. Chris Jones is one of the best players in football. Spagnuolo's a master. He's a wizard over there on that side of the ball, calling their plays. I really like this Chiefs defense. This is a big, big story going into this game. And again, you're telling me, give me a team with the best defense and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I don't know. I got 2 weeks to go back and forth on this, Fitz, but as I sit here right now, going against Patrick Mahomes a 4th straight time in this playoffs just seems dumb. I'm a pretty dumb guy at times, but I shouldn't be that dumb, right? Like this is at some point, I'd be just being stubborn if I go against him again. He's just, again, I hate to keep using this phrase, but he's that dude. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's Michael Jordan. He's Willie Mays. He's whatever great athlete you want to throw in there. Patrick Mahomes is that guy right now.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The 49ers defense, the 49ers as a team so far have gotten some wins, but I don't know that they've put together convincing 4-quarter victories that we all look at and say,
they did, but it's been a while. I mean, they did.
I mean in the playoffs.
There's a stretch.
In the playoffs
no, not the playoffs. No, the last really, really big time win they got was early December. And that's not that long ago, but in NFL terms, it kind of is. Like, ever since they lost to the Ravens, I think this like aura of invincibility. I mean, remember when that game kicked off against the Ravens on Christmas, the 49ers Ravens, I thought the 49ers were unbeatable. I thought they were going to run the table to the Super Bowl, never be challenged, anything like that. The Ravens took it to them that night. And I think since then, everybody else looking at that film was like, well, they're not that great. You ain't so bad. You ain't so bad, to quote the great Rocky Balboa. I just feel like that aura of invincibility is gone for the 49ers, and the Chiefs are going to be intimidated anyway. They got, they got championship pedigree, but especially seeing them play the last couple of weeks, I think Andy Reid's going to look at that film and say, we could beat this team.
I do believe both losers in the championship game weekend got tight at different points. I do not believe either of these teams will be susceptible of that because they've both been in these types of situations. As franchises, like, look, the Chiefs, nothing's going to get the Chiefs tight. I don't know what we'll see from Brock Purdy, but I have a hard time in my mind thinking the 49ers are going to be overwhelmed by the moment, given the fact that they've been around these moments as much as they have over the last few years. Now, as we look back at this round of the playoffs, there were some amazing performances that delivered teams one step closer to football glory. Thanks to our friends at Amazon Prime, we want to single out two individuals who really delivered. Frank, get weird with me. Whatever the word delivered means to you, who delivered the most this weekend?
I think I'm going to go with Travis Kelce's girlfriend. It's Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is going to the Super Bowl. Now, look, she's got a long way to go. There's some logistics involved here, Fitz, with Taylor Swift making the Super Bowl. If people haven't known about this already, well, you're about ready to find out. Taylor Swift, she's on the Eras Tour, right? Maybe you've heard about that. She's going to be in Tokyo doing shows Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. She's going to get done with her last show in Tokyo about 5 a.m, Las Vegas time on Saturday. Maybe we'll be up still. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes,
but Taylor's likely going to get on a plane, come to Las Vegas, land on Saturday, watch her boyfriend Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl, then go back on the Eras Tour in Australia later this week. Taylor Swift, to me, if you hate Taylor Swift, if you are that upset about Taylor Swift being on your TV screen for 3 seconds at a time, you're not the person for me. I love this story. I want to see more of Taylor Swift. I hope she gets on that plane from Tokyo to Las Vegas, makes this Super Bowl. Taylor Swift, I heard Nicole Auerbach over at USA Today made the joke. Taylor Swift has been in the NFL for 1 year and she's already going to a Super Bowl. I love that line. I'm going with it. Taylor Swift delivered. She's going all the way to the Super Bowl, and I hope she makes it from her show in Tokyo in time to cheer on Travis Kelce.
Yeah, shout out to my buddy Matt Billingsley. We've known each other a long time. He is Taylor's drummer. I asked right away, hey, you coming to Vegas? I just got it. No. So, the rest of the band ain't making it. I don't doubt.
It's about a 12-hour flight. I've done all the logistics here, Fitz. Yeah. I want you to know that I've made sure Tay-Tay is going to be able to get to Vegas, and logistically it should work for her.
I love all of this, by the way. Matt, if there are any parties that Tay-Tay gets into, you want to invite Frank and Fitz, let's get this thing done. Like we can party with Tay-Tay. All right. So I'll give you, you got a little weird. I'll give you a delivery that's weird. I'll give you Zay Flowers. We were talking about Zay earlier, but here's why he makes my delivery list, because he delivered for both sides. He was basically all of the offense for the Ravens with the yards that he was able to get in the air. But he was also a bunch of the reasons why the Ravens weren't able to win this football game. I mean, we talked about the taunting penalty. We talked about the fumble into the end zone. These are moments that I believe Zay Flowers as a rookie is going to look at and grow from. There is no doubt about it. And it's funny to me because realistically, when we look back on this game, instead of thinking about his stat line, instead of thinking about all of the big catches, instead of thinking about the fact that he was the one guy that was consistently able to get down the field for the Ravens, particularly late in the game, we are all going to think about the fumble. That is just the way the NFL works, but I got to give him credit. Come on, he delivered for his team by putting up big yards, but he also delivered for the NFL script writers by making sure that he can fumble into the end zone, which makes sure that we get Tay-Tay into the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, now all we need is Taylor Swift to deliver a performance in the Usher halftime show. Those were your playoff deliveries from the championship round, obviously. Whatever you're into, from shopping to streaming, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into. Frank, real quick, you want to give us any early predictions? I won't hold you to it. Like, we can pick a different prediction every week. We got plenty of time. I will tell you early on.
That's what I wanted. That's my prediction, is that we're going to do 14 days of predictions and just pick the best one at the end and be like, see, we nailed it. We got the final score right. Like, forget the 13 that were wrong. I will say, I'll save my final prediction. I'm leaning Chiefs, as you could probably tell from before, but I think this is going to be a really, really fun game just because of these two teams do have the history of the Super Bowl. I believe these two teams in many ways are both deserving to get there. The way they fought through adversity, either during a regular season for the Chiefs or during the playoffs for the 49ers. I think we got a great coaching matchup. We have this crazy contrast to the quarterbacks. So you got the great Patrick Mahomes against Mr. Irrelevant, who's kind of carving out his own history. I think this is a great Super Bowl. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good game, fun game. You see that the 49ers are favored by 2, so Vegas thinks it's going to be close. Really excited for this one. I assume you are too, right? This is a good Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah, and by the way, it's a funny thing. there's a whole group of Raiders fans in the world that obviously, because of the rivalry with the Chiefs, never root for the Chiefs. And also, if you're from the Bay Area, don't love the 49ers. I don't share that. So like the social media was all abuzz weeks ago about, is it possible that the Chiefs and the 49ers will be playing in Allegiant in Vegas in the Raiders stadium for a Super Bowl? Oh, the heartbreak. That stuff just doesn't really bother me. Like, look, I'm never going to root for the Chiefs. I'm a Raiders fan. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not sitting here angst ridden. Like, if the Chiefs win a Super Bowl or lose a Super Bowl, it ain't going to change my Sunday. So like, and I don't care about the 49ers at all. I didn't grow up in the Bay Area. I have nothing but it is interesting to me that the Raiders have to give up their facilities, their training facilities, to the Chiefs for the Super Bowl prep. So, I think they'll be a little bit like, maybe they don't turn the hot water on. Maybe even just make sure it's not a comfy experience. I'm not going to give you my official.
Done that. I don't know if Mark has it in him, but Al Davis might have done that. I need that. I can see it.
I need that. My oddly specific prediction, very early, oddly specific prediction is that Travis Kelce is your Super Bowl MVP. Right. And we end up with the confetti falling and Travis Kelce holding the trophy up as he does his "I'm going to go to Disneyland" commercial with Tay-Tay, just like hanging out in the back. But Tay-Tay ain't going to give that out for free. There's no way she's doing that ad for free. So whatever, like, she'll be down there with him with the confetti falling. And then when the camera says, you just won the Super Bowl, she's going to walk one step out of frame as he says, I'm headed to it, because she ain't giving them that money for free. Like, there's no way about that. That's my oddly specific prediction. We'll figure out our game predictions over the course of the next couple of weeks. Again, we have 2 weeks until the Super Bowl, but we're not going anywhere. Charles McDonald back on Tuesday with the exempt list. As always, you guys can leave us a voicemail, especially if they're funny. We might play them in the show. Speakpipe.com/0blitz. Leave us something that makes us laugh. You might get in the show. Follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab to get to Frank, at Jason Fitz to get to me. And of course, Stone is at SJ Rochelle. That's how you get to our producer doing God's work behind the glass. Leave us that 5-star review. Rate, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, your enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us. It's always fun, mostly because Frank's dashingly good looking and I'm that entertaining. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great week, y'all.